profound concerns about the actions that Chinese enterprises are taking to support Russia's defense industrial base. There's no substitute, in our judgment, for face-to-face diplomacy in order to try to move forward, but also to make sure that we're as clear as possible about the areas where we have differences.
Finally, the long-awaited visit of the US Secretary of State to China has come and gone. But the question now is, did it yield any fruits? Because to me, it seems like Antony Blinken's visit to China has caused more problems instead of trying to fix the long-strained US-China relations, which has been going on for quite a while now. And after observing the whole charade closely and listening to Blinken's threats to China amidst the global reactions, I had to make this video so I can share my personal overview to show you guys how Antony Blinken's trip might have caused more harm than good. Now, before Blinken's trip to China, there were other top US diplomats who visited China before, like Gina Raimondo, Janet Yellen, and many others, and they all seem to always have a similar objective in mind while visiting China. That was to ask China to slow down and not overstretch their global relations, with Janet Yellen even mentioning the idea of reducing the overcapacity here in China for the good of the whole world, and especially for the good of the United States, as I can say, because Janet Yellen specified that overcapacity could cause US jobs to be lost. Now, with the main aim of Blinken's visit being to resolve disputes and maintain stability in ties, of course, between the US and China, Blinken's 3-day visit through Shanghai and Beijing here in China saw him meeting the Chinese President Xi Jinping, the Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and the Chinese Minister of Public Security Wang Xiaohong. Despite all these meetings, the outcome wasn't as positive as most would have hoped for, because when we look at it critically, Blinken's visit was coming at a time when the TikTok bill was being signed by President Biden, which seemed to be really contradictory to the purpose of Blinken's visit, as most analysts saw the issues with the TikTok ban as a very wrong move, as it was at the same time when Blinken was about to visit China. And while in Shanghai around April 25th, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken asked China to provide a level playing field for American businesses. But the question we should be asking ourselves is, which companies face more sanctions and tariffs from both sides? Which companies are facing more difficulties in which market? Because as we all know, a huge number of Chinese businesses have been sanctioned in the US over the past years, which is making it very difficult for Chinese businesses to be able to survive and thrive in the US market. For example, we can take a look at Huawei to TikTok to BYD, just to name a few. Now, the truth is that Chinese exports and production capacity has really improved significantly in recent years, and more parts of the world are beginning to embrace more of Chinese products, especially Chinese technology and clean energy products like Chinese EVs and solar energy. And of course, that's the reason why I believe Janet Yellen said during her visit that this will affect markets in general, and of course American markets and jobs in particular. Now, Blinken continued with a similar narrative, which he stressed on the fact that the United States seeks a healthy economic competition with China on a level playing field for the US workers and firms operating in China. But then guys, like I mentioned before, the economic environment in the United States seems to be more hostile as compared to American companies here in China. And this can clearly be seen through Elon Musk's recent visit to China, for example, which was a very huge success, where he signed amazing deals which are favorable for Tesla. Now, the truth is that there will always be economic hurdles for foreign businesses in any country, especially when they are trying to adhere to the laws and respect the local systems that have been put in place by the governments of that country. And all these difficulties are the same for every country worldwide. But then on the contrary, I think placing more sanctions over and over to companies in your country doesn't do any good and isn't actually a level playing field. Because when we talk about level playing field, what do we really mean? Does it mean you place more sanctions and tariffs on other companies, or does it mean you let other companies have an equal competitive advantage like your home companies? Like, for example, I believe here in China, Tesla has an equal competitive advantage like BYD, like XPeng, and other EV companies right here. But then, can we say the same for Chinese companies in the United States? I don't think so. So I'll let you guys answer in the comment section if you think that is what we can consider a level playing field for businesses worldwide. So when we put all of this into context, during Blinken's visit. I believe that's the reason why the spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Wang Wenbin, said China hopes that the US will respect the principle of fair competition, abide by the World Trade Organization rules, and of course work with China to create a favorable condition for a sound and steady development of China and US economic and trade relations. And I believe by mentioning the principle of fair competition here, the spokesperson is referring to the fact that the economic and trade field is not fair, probably due to the multiple sanctions by the US on Chinese companies and on China year in, year out, which is definitely pushing China into figuring out other options, just like they have recently been doing in the chip and tech industry. Now, Williams, despite all the trade issues that Blinken stressed on during his China visit, another key point was the Russia issue. This is a very sensitive topic that was to be handled by Blinken during his China visit. Now, while in Beijing, Blinken raised concerns about China's support for the Russian military, which, as we all know, has been a very big issue between the US and China due to the war in Ukraine.
It's not what we expect of them. It's their profound concerns about the actions that Chinese enterprises are taking to support Russia's defense industrial base, because this goes not only to the immediate threat posed by Russia and its aggression against Ukraine, it goes to a medium and long-term threat that many Europeans feel viscerally that Russia potentially poses to them.
As we all know, China is a top supplier of raw materials and machinery used in the making of ammunition and microelectronics that are used to produce arms. And all of this equipment can be used for other purposes, but they can also be used to build ammunition. But well, it is no secret that China has always had a very good relationship with Russia, but hasn't supplied any arms to them during the war between Russia and Ukraine. But I believe Blinken brought up the point of materials on the fact that raw materials and goods from China could be repurposed for arms against Ukraine. And as we all know, the US has been sending multiple aid and support to Ukraine against Russia. Now, despite all this, China has always maintained that no weapons have been supplied to either Russia or Ukraine, and they washed their hands off completely from the Russia-Ukraine war. And I've said this before, China has always be neutral in many situations like this, including the war in Gaza. And due to this, in recent news, the Biden administration even imposed more sanctions on Chinese companies for helping Russia's war effort. And of course, that is even after China denied helping Russia. So the US has recently placed 300 new sanctions on international suppliers of military equipment technology, and that includes many companies based in China, with the Biden administration confirming that more China firms and financial institutions will be sanctioned if they give any help to Russia. So I believe when we look at all of this, it's seemingly very complicated. Now, Williams, at the end of the day, the big question here is, will all these visits by US diplomats, of course top US diplomats to China, yield any fruits, when it seems like the meetings say one thing, but the actions say something else? Because when they discuss something in the meetings, they do something else in reality. For example, while Blinken was in China, President Joe Biden was signing a rare bipartisan bill of up to $8 billion to counter China's military strength, and even more billions in defense for Taiwan, while signing $61 billion in aid to Ukraine. I think that's kind of contradictory when you think about it. And that sure doesn't seem like a level playing field. Because I believe if we are talking about a level playing field, it should be in all aspects. Now, with China not giving an ear to the threats from the United States and many more countries siding with China through relationships like the BRICS and other trade agreements, does this mean the US global dominance is slowly fading? And does it also mean that the global south is getting tired of the US policing? One question I always ask myself is, why can't all the billions that are being invested into wars be redirected in trying to solve the problem that created all these wars in the first place? Because putting in billions into wars, lives lost, taxpayers' money lost, but no solutions. For many years, people keep fighting and more billions into the wars, but nothing. Well, I believe it is what it is. We just have to keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. We need the right leaders in place to think about the citizens and hope that everything works out perfectly. At the end of the day, guys, I think Antony Blinken's visit in China was not really successful, as I can say, because nothing came out of it. Nothing out of substance came out of it. Despite all the threats, China still keeps on doing what it knows best. Production, trade, more relationships, and everything just keeps going as it is. Well, let's see what the future holds. Fingers crossed. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like this video, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more weekly videos like this. This is Willene. See you next time.